Only when we do what we truly want, we get to do everything we want. That's a quote that came to my head yesterday before I went for my workout instead of writing on my species to become an ayurvedic coach. And after doing that and coming home again, I managed to finish this species anyway. And I really understood that I managed to have time to everything instead of pursuing something that wasn't feeling right in the moment. And that's exactly what I want to speak about today, because what I have been writing a lot about in my essay for becoming an Ayurvedic coach is our Dharma. And Dharma is an Ayurvedic word that comes from Sanskrit, and we use it to describe our road of life, our life road, whatever you want to call it in English. And the meaning is basically just that we are pursuing our bigger purpose, the reason that we have been set here on earth. And something that I want to bring into the studio as well is that for the first time ever, I do not have a guest in the studio, but I have two audiences behind the camera to test myself and push my own limits and my own beliefs, because I have managed my whole life to be on stages all around the world and have no issue performing in front of more than 2,000 people. But taking pictures in public places or recording in front of other people will make me sweat, and I can barely say a word. So we have actually my partner and one of my great friends behind the camera. If you can say hi so that people know that you're actually here.
Hello.
So they're here behind the camera to help me push my own limits, because if there's one thing that will forever hold us back, it is not living consciously and not daring to push our own limits. Welcome back to Heal with Emmy. I am your healing bestie, and this podcast is for you who wants to heal, who wants a life of abundance, and for you who just stands out of the normal crowd. For you who knows that there are way more to life than what most people actually think. So what is Dharma, and how do we pursue it, and how do we know that we are on the right way? So one thing that we have all been set here on earth is to give something, and I have said that before in my podcast, that we are all destined here on earth with gifts, and we are all meant to give something and to learn something from others. That's the beauty of the dance between people. But what we also see, or what Ayurveda argues, is that before you're being born, you are still in touch with the higher self, with the higher consciousness, with the pure living. And that's also actually why in Ayurveda that you say that babies' heads are so soft, because they still have this opening to the higher power, or whatever you want to call it. And slowly when we grow up, we get away from this contact, and we are so focused on the physical world of what we see around us and where we walk. And I see a tendency that in Ayurveda it argues that your upbringing is the one that will either keep you in contact with the higher power. You can never truly be in the same contact with the higher power when you are physically on earth, but you can do as much as you can. Or if you will forget that part of yourself and not living consciously and not following your Dharma, because if you're not conscious, you can't be on your right life road, your Dharma. And most upbringings are unfortunately in the way of making their kids understanding and pursuing society's expectations, outer expectations, versus encouraging to listen to the inner voice, to the soul, to the whisper of the soul. I have argued in my thesis that it's because that society has created a norm for how we do everything, a norm for how we go to the doctor, a norm for how we find a partner, a norm for how we go to the university or find a job, a norm for everything. And we have learned that to fit into these frames is easier than to stand out. I know that for myself, that my entire life that's the thesis was not really a thesis, but it's the best word I could find in English. But basically what it is a long self-reflection about ourselves, with complete freedom to in what way this assignment would take us. And what I ended up reflecting on is actually my whole life. From as you know, when I started this podcast, I was in Mexico, and I was in this intense 3 months healing, and I was healing everything, all the biggest traumas of my life. And then slowly, actually, what was so crazy was like an even more intense and more awakening journal to write this assignment, because then I slowly started to actually reflect about the things that I have been healing, the things that I have been pouring out the past few months. And I started to understand some patterns about my childhood that now I feel completely okay that that's how things turned out, because those were kind of how it was meant to do because of how I decided to act or how I was pushed to act. Because also as a kid, we reflect our parents. So if your parents are spiritual and conscious, or if they are super well in university degrees and maybe they are lawyers and they are very highly speaking about the normal society box, that's what you will become. If you're growing up in a family that loves art, you will love art too. If you're growing up in a family that eats a lot of fast food, that might be something you also will do. And that is leading back to when we are being born, that when we are being born, we're complete pure, we are clean. We have actually still contact with the higher power, and we have yet not experienced enough on earth to form us in a direction that actually, unfortunately, might be pushing us away from our Dharma. And I think the only reason that we are being pushed away from our Dharma and from our conscious self is once again because of society norms. That I remember my whole childhood, I wasn't really asked what I wanted to do, but I was more looking at what was expected of me to do, and then I did that. So for the first 17 years of my life, I was the perfect child in everything. I was the perfect student, I was the perfect daughter, I was the perfect swimmer, I was number one in everything I did, because that was what was expected of me, because I grew up in a home that said that if you are not number one, there is no reason to participate. That's literally the mentality that always has been in generations of my family. And I think also it's a really good mentality to some degree, because I like this competition you can also have with yourself to always become better. But it can also become really unhealthy, which it did for me, because it turned out to be this complete perfectionism. And instead of asking myself what I truly wanted to do, and instead of accepting that some days I might need rest, I kept going and I kept pushing, and it felt good in the middle of it and in the moment of it. But now when I'm reflecting back, it's crazy to realize how different actions have led me in different directions. Because also as a kid, how conscious can we actually be? And I think again, the answer is depending on your childhood and on the family that you grow up in. Because if you grow up in a family that are encouraging you to truly think about what you want and to truly believe in yourself and to truly be yourself, you'll be more drawn to finding your Dharma, and that might be much easier for you to do it. That's also why we see so many people hitting 30, or that we in general just have the phrase called midlife crisis, because people have been pursuing things that might not even be the right thing for them. Because most childhoods, you are being taught, if you're not being taught at home, at least the school would teach you that there's one solution fits all, and that's the best solution you can get. But that's not really what we are meant to do here on earth. We are not really meant to follow one solution. We are meant to gift the world with whatever that we are meant to gift it with. It's different from person to person. And that's leading me back to the whole thing about, this is like all about what is Dharma, and how do we see that we are being pushed away from our Dharma. And that's also why I also in my assignment said that this is one of the reasons that we see most people asking, okay, what's next? Rather than, what do I actually want? And there's a huge difference in that. And I have been doing the same up until I was like 21. I kept saying like, okay, what's next? And this intense thing of being perfect for 17 years also is what caused me to completely like fall into the biggest hole that I have ever been in my whole life for like 4 years. My whole high school time, I was so down, and I was actually in a state that you might argue for depressed, and I was fleeing through food and alcohol and all these things I've told you before. And I have actually, up until a few days ago, thought, why was I so perfect for the first 17 years of my life, and then when I hit gymnasium I became a nothing? I have kind of, had a really hard time digesting these 4 years. That was really tough for me, because I didn't know myself as a lazy person. I didn't know myself as a person who couldn't come up off the bed or anything. But the fact is that if we push ourselves too hard and we are not aware of what our true dharma is, that's typically where we end. That's why so many people are stressed or depressed or have anxiety, because they don't have any contact or any touch with higher power or their purpose of life or anything. And purpose of life doesn't have to be business-wise. It can just as much be personal. Like, some people's dharma is to be a great mom, and some people's dharma is to be the next Dalai Lama or the next Warren Buffett. So it really differs, and nothing is wrong. The only thing that's wrong is if you aren't listening to what's your truly life purpose here. So yes, if we are growing up in a society that are encouraging us or teaching us to live as everyone else, and if we are by society's norms being pushed away from our dharma and forgetting that, how can we come back to that? How can we come in touch with our dharma if that's what we want? Which I definitely encourage you to do. The first thing you can do is to look the facts in the eyes that you do not want to look in the eyes. Because we have two voices according to Ayurveda. And the reason that so many people are not following their dharma is also because they are listening to the voice of the ego. The voice of the ego speaks very loudly and almost yell. And then you have the other voice, who is the voice of your soul. And that soul whispers very gently, and it can be super difficult to hear because of all the noise that we live in today. All the noise that are in our minds, because we are constantly on Instagram and on TikTok and watching Netflix and being on Facebook and working and talking with people. And then there's also cars on the street, and you are living in a city, and there is radio noise and TV noise and all noise around you, and you have thousands of negative statements you are hearing on your work every day. So there's so much noise, and it can be so difficult to find your soul's whisper in all this noise unless you practice mindfulness. And that's why Ayurveda speaks so highly about meditation and then mindfulness, because it's through these things that we get really close to ourselves. Because meditation is a journey from activity to stillness, and it's in this stillness, it's in this quiet stillness that we kind of actually just let our mind and our soul have a break. Because as I've said before, like, imagine how we are designed is exactly the same as we were designed 2,000 and 4,000 years ago. We haven't changed physically, like, really, and definitely not mentally. So we still need the same things, but we are surrounded by so many more inputs today than we were that time. And that's why meditation is a really, really good tool for you to use, also to find your dharma. Because my point here is that in all this loudness and in all these surroundings and things that you take in every single day that I have, as said before, you have to digest, it can be very difficult to figure out who you are. And what the ego does not like is that the ego does not like things it is not used to. So the ego will much rather want to stay in unhappiness and not having you fulfilled, but at least knowing the same routines, rather than you pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and you really being working on yourself. And it goes from everything from you working 1 more hour of the project that you really want to do, or you putting down your phone to truly be with your kids, or you not taking that extra piece of chocolate cake. These are things that the ego will want you to not do, because they want you to eat that extra piece of cake, because it's tempted by it, because it's looking for short-term satisfaction and short-term pleasure. Whereas the whisper of the soul has your truest interest, and the whisper of your soul wants you to go in the right direction, and the whisper of the soul is willing to wait for the outcome to come, because it knows that as long as you take your actions towards it, it will support you and the rewardings will come to you. So most people actually live with their ego as the primary voice. And that's why the only way to be connected is through meditation, is through mindfulness. And I have seen it on myself that when I started meditating, I was getting much better at reacting, because I wasn't just reacting without thinking, and I was truly reacting to everything around me in peace now, versus before I could be really affected by negative talk or stuff like that, where now I would walk away in peace and I will be okay. And also just how we let go of things, that we are not clinging to one thing like super unhealthy to make it perfect. For example, another thing for me that happened the other day is that in my theoretical test to become a coach, I got 99% correct. And you will probably think now that that's really good. And I think that too. But the first thought that came to me was like, damn, I wanted 100% correct. And that's the thing about always being so judgmental about ourselves. And this is also a super negative thing in our mind that will distract us from our true purpose, because this 99%, even though I thought, damn, I wanted 100%, the moment after I truly thought, okay, Emmy, that was a really good test for you, because perfection is in the imperfection, and you don't have to do everything all the time. You are whole by just being you. You already did really good, so there's no reason to worry about the one last percent. And that's also a thing that will help you towards your Dharma, because if you are so much in the negative things versus the positive things, like instead of saying, damn, I was 1% less than being 100%, you could say, wow, I was 99% from being 100%. I mean, there's a huge difference between these two sentences, even though it's the same amount of numbers. And this reaction is thanks to my meditation and to my mindfulness, because mindfulness comes from the Buddhistic religion, I think, actually. And it is actually the understanding of mindfulness you also achieve via meditation, but mindfulness is also achieved by having a complete focus on the one thing that you do. I am only now speaking to you. When I cook, I am only cooking. I'm not on my phone listening to music or watching a movie while I do it. I am only cooking. And when I'm studying, I am only studying. This way, you can still have an active mind, but nurturing it instead of destroying it, because your mind is also really well off being active, is really well off being developed. And that's also why, for example, I asked my partner and my friend to sit behind the camera, because I wanted to push myself. And I am here having the only focus on you, even though that I know these two are behind the camera and I see them anyway. But this is the complete mindfulness. That is how we nurture our mind to become stronger versus destroying them in the eagerness of achieving something that we're not really knowing what we're looking for. And that's also to lead back to these 4 years of my high school where I was so down. I felt so heavy, and that's also what we in Ayurveda would call tamas energy and also the imbalance of kapha, because it's like super heavy and unhealthy. And it's just two words that I'm mentioning in case that you like this Ayurvedic talk. You can, tell me to explain more about it, or Google a little about it, or reach out to me and we'll speak about it privately. I'd love that. But these are like really heavy energies and heavy doshas, heavy qualities. And now when I reflect back on it, I see that that was a reaction of 17 years of intense work, of always being, always having a mind in the future and always having a mind intense and awake and never relaxing. So of course I collapsed, and I felt in these 4 years, this is something that I have only understood like a few days ago, but I remember that I felt in these 4 years, I felt there is more. And I remember that I was so depressed because I knew there was more, and I knew that I was destined for something super different than what I was doing, but I didn't know what, and I definitely didn't dare to figure it out because I was so scared for going my own way, and I was so scared of doing my thing because I have all the way up until then been taught that that's not what we're supposed to do, and the people that fits in, then the people who has friends or whatever, are the people that are fitting in, the people that start to smoke because everyone else does it, or the people that get bangs because everyone else does it, or the people that drink because everyone else does it. Those are the people that fit in, the people who go to law school because everyone else does it. And I was so scared to not fit in, and it destroyed me. I mean, my high intensity of 70 years destroyed me, and the thing that I knew that I was meant for something different, but I didn't dare to figure out what it was because I knew that it would be so different. So the people that there was currently in my life would not accept me, or would not understand me, or would not be close to me because it would be so different from them. Which I now think with gratefulness that that's the truth, because these are not people that I wish to have close in my life now, and it's not people that I at all speak with anymore. But I remember that being in this fight between myself, that I knew there was more, but how were I going to find it, and what would happen to me when I did find it? Because I knew it was so different, and I knew that I would have to walk my complete own path, that no one would be able to teach me but myself. And to my warm experience, I found out that when I slowly started to walk my life purpose, and when I slowly started to do everything that felt right for me, I saw that there still existed people for me. And these people are people that I love being surrounded by. And that was actually what was holding me back before, because I thought that if I broke out of the pattern, I would be alone. But it turns out that we're never alone. There's always people for all kind of personalities and for all kind of interest and people. There are people who are breaking out of the patterns and we are together, and there are people who are staying in the patterns and they are together, and there are people who likes punk and there are people who likes jazz. That's kind of the whole thing, that even though that the people that are around you right now might not fit into what you truly want, that doesn't mean you're going to be alone. Quite the contrary. It just means that you haven't met your people yet. And the only way to meet your people is to start living your own person. And that's really what I have learned this year. That there's only one way that we can be truly happy and truly fulfilled. And that's also what Ayurveda says, that you can only reach your full potential if you are living your dharmic life, if you're living your purpose of your life. And I also do want to mention that we might have bigger dharmic roads, bigger life purposes that might stick with us more or less the whole life, but we also have smaller roads on this way that also are dharmic. Like as a kid, you might have, one interest that really fills your heart and that really feels right for you. And that might change as you become older, and all of a sudden maybe you want to be a parent or something, and that might also be a dharmic way for you to be a really good parent, still, as maybe you have your biggest dharma, which might be, being a great speaker or being a great writer or something. So the point is that there's multiple things that always will be right for us. And you can't, maybe you're like asking yourself now, like, what is my bigger life purpose? And that can be really, really hard to answer before you even know what you truly want for breakfast. And that's where I started. I started after my cancer experience I had, as I told you, in 2021 in last episode. I started after that. I traveled out January 2022, and I truly started asking myself, what do I want in every single aspect of my life? What do I truly want to eat today? Where do I truly want to travel to? What do I truly want to do? And I kept asking myself that kind of by an automation, it just became something that I truly felt that I wanted to do. In the beginning, it was definitely something that I had to practice. I had to decide that completely cut off, excusing for other people, and completely cut off people pleasing, all those things that I was really good at. I was always keeping up excuses for myself to not hurt other people or stuff like that. But when the day ends, actually what I was doing was that I was holding myself back. And I was not at all in contact with my full potential. So that's where I started. I started asking these questions. I started becoming really aware about, what do I want? What sport do I really want to do? Who do I really want to be with? What job do I really want to do? All these things. Do I really want to see my mom today, or do I not want to see my mom today? Haha. And we have one light down. And that leads me to round it up by what I asked my partner just before recording this podcast. I have had my head complete into my ayurvedic assignment, and I told him at lunch, I was like, what am I going to speak about today? And he gave me a topic, and the topic was actually about how we either are so focused on achieving our goals that we are more in the picture of the achieved goal than in the journey. At least that was more or less how I understood it. So there's a question about, are you so much in your achieved goal, or are you in the journey? And the difference will be that if you, for example, are so much in the goal of having an aesthetic body and being super slim and shredded, or whatever your like ideal body type would be, and you are so focused on the body type that you see yourself having and not the journey, it will be really difficult for you to actually achieve this thing that you are visualizing so much, even though you truly want it. And I am speaking for myself, because I have seen throughout the last 2 years, I have seen a difference from when I truly enjoy my sport to when I do my sport because of a goal that I achieve. And every time I do my sport because I enjoy it, I become in such a good physical shape, and I also become happier, and my body is super anti-inflammatory, and I feel so clean and so awake and ready and happy. Versus then I had a moment here in 2024, in the beginning of the year, where I became so focused on the body that I wanted to achieve, and that actually made me gain weight in fat, and it made me super, I think, inflamed or something. I was super bloated, and I always had like just a sore, tired body, and I felt I could do nothing. And now I'm back at just doing my sport because I enjoy it, and I see how big of a difference that does. And that's what I want to like to tell you, that also how this is also leading back to the Dharma, that instead of, don't think about the goal. Actually, you can have your goal as long as the goal truly comes from your heart, but don't be attached to the outcome of the goal. Have an idea of what direction you want to go, but ask yourself, what actions do I truly enjoy to do? For example, do I truly enjoy to do the gym? No. Do I truly enjoy to do, for example, football or swimming or boxing? Yes. Okay, then I do that. And then you see little by little, as you do these things that you love, actually, without even having the focus on it, you will achieve this body that you actually truly want. And you will achieve it so much faster, and you will achieve it with so much more joy, and it will bring you And it will bring you the biggest treasure that you can even imagine. And it will bring you things that you didn't even imagine along the way, because you were not attached to the goal or to the outcome of the goal, the specific outcome. You were more into enjoying the journey and into, making a true habit out of the things that you enjoy every day. And it also becomes much easier to stick to the habits when you truly love them. If you make out habits because you have a goal that you see yourself achieving, it will be harder for you to keep those habits up, because you do it to push yourself, and some days it can even feel like a punishment. But if you find habits that you truly enjoy, everything will be much more fun for you, and you will see that you are achieving the things that you're dreaming about anyway. Exactly as I started the podcast, by choosing to do the things we truly want, we will achieve everything. So to round everything up, your dharmic way in Ayurveda means your life purpose, and you have multiple one of them, but you cannot hear them if you are too aware of all the outer noise. If you're turning on news every single day, if you are listening to the cast every single day, and it's all fair that we're living in a city. I'm in a big city now as well, and that's good too, but just remember to really practice mindfulness or meditation. Look at trees, take a walk, even though that you might walk block after block and not see so many trees or grass. Still be outside and get fresh air and feel the sun kiss your skin. Things that connect you and ground you, do those things. If you enjoy cooking, cook, because it will calm your mind. When we do things that we truly enjoy, our mind is being calmed. And even though that it might be an active thing, such as for me, I love my sport and I love it, but I get into this meditative state when I do sports, because I become so much into it that I think of nothing else. And that's mindfulness. That's exactly mindfulness. Even though that I am doing very high intensity sport, I am in this complete meditative flow, and it just gives me so much and recharge me for the rest of the day and tomorrow and so on. And also, don't, blame your parents. Don't blame anyone in your childhood for pushing you in a direction you might not want to go, because the fact that you have become aware of it now is the biggest gift. We cannot change the past, and we cannot control the future. We can have impacts on the future, but we can't control it. So instead of regretting the past, learn from it and accept it, and then start practicing things that will truly give you your answer, and that will truly make you listen to your soul's whisper, because it is a beautiful whisper when you finally start to hear it. It's a beautiful voice. And don't be afraid. I know that's really easy. It's much easier said than done. It's been something that I've been struggling with a lot, that I have been so afraid to do what I truly want and what I truly see myself doing, because how can I do it? Will anyone ever listen to me? Will I just embarrass myself? And that's the thing. The unfortunately thing is that for some people, including myself, my family and the people around me that was in my childhood, what was actually the people that discouraged me. That every time I had a good idea and every time I truly had a passion for something, people never really believed in it, and they never believed that I could do it. And the thing that I understand today is that it's not because they don't believe I can do it, it's because they can't see themselves doing it. And for that reason, they can see no one doing it, because that's how our mind works. It's not because they want to hurt you by not believing in you, it's because they don't believe in themselves. So every time that you are being discouraged about something, don't worry, because if that's truly your way, you should do it, because you can do it. And by really doing what you're meant to do, you will have the full potential to do it, and it will work out either way. It will work out as long as you enjoy the journey. Even small things as truly choosing what you're going to eat tomorrow. And also, something that I always said to people when I was a recruiter, if they were nervous or feeling afraid of their interview, I always said that actually our brain does not know the difference from being truly excited or being super nervous, afraid. And so when you are in this state of being truly nervous or afraid, tell yourself that, hey, I'm actually truly excited. Because you can turn that. You can, cheat your brain, even though it's not a cheat. It's actually just a gift for yourself. You can choose that. It's always about your focus. And by pushing your, how you are afraid, you push your limits and you become even more. For example, as me, I just recorded a whole episode with audience behind me, and a few weeks ago that would never have happened. And today I just chose that enough is enough, and I will manage, and this is going to be great. And I can do it even though people are looking in real life, because I think that that's one thing that I am working a lot on, and something that will take me time to work a lot on, is that people are looking, and that's okay. Because as long as I stay true to myself, they can look as much as they want, because I will be proud. And that's something I think is a really important thing actually to think about, because for me it's also small things about just taking a walk for myself in the streets that I can become super self-aware, because I know people are looking. And for me it's even worse now, because I love traveling in countries that does not have a lot of blonde people. I am always like in South America or in Asia or now in Morocco. So I am being looked more at because I look very different from what they're used to seeing. And no matter if people are looking at me because they observe neutral, or is because it's a compliment, or because they think badly, I still become super self-aware. And that's something that I have actually also spoken to my best friend about in Mexico, that's something I want to release, this self-obsession. It's not even self-aware, it's like self-obsession, that I become so nervous that something's wrong with me, that people are looking. And I think that's also why I have had a hard time making podcasts or recording anything else in front of other people, because I became so insecure if what I'm saying is good enough, because it's being judged in real time and not just in a replay. So that's what I will end the podcast with. I hope that you can reflect yourself in my stories, or in some way see what I'm telling you, see what I'm showing you, that push your limits. When you are afraid of something, it's typically what you should try to do, because there's a reason that you are keep thinking about it even though it makes you afraid. For example, as me, recording in front of other people, it's a block that I wanted to have out of my way, and there's only one way to get that block out, and that's to do it, and that's to face it. And that's one thing that also will help me to strengthen my life path and to make me more connected with it. Because without being able to record in front of other people and truly become into that and forget about the people around me, I would not be my best self in my dharmic way. So today I have already unlocked something that will lead me much more closer, and that will lead me to much bigger result of my dharmic way. I know that because I follow it every day, and that's what I encourage you to also. Now that was all from today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you felt heard. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and find me on Instagram on Heal with Emmy to stay part of this conversation. Now all that's left to say is all the love from me to you until next weekend.